Alright, what's up guys? This is the second part of my movement tutorial. In this video I'm going to talk about more advanced movement. I waited a little bit to record this. I waited to do it on Tekken Tag 2 Prologue so that you guys could understand that everything that I'm telling you guys in these movement tutorials will apply in Tekken Tag Tournament 2. So I have that on right now. I know a lot of people that watched the first video commented that they wanted to see my hands while I was doing this, and unfortunately my video editing skills are bottom tier, so I am not gonna edit a video to show my hands like in a a picture-in-picture. But what I will do is right now I will just demonstrate what your hands should look like when you're doing Korean backdash and wave dash on an arcade stick, which is what I use. So if you are on one player side, which is the left side, what you would do is you would use your thumb to hit back and these fingers right here to hit down back. That's the method I use. There are several methods to use to do Korean backdash and wave dash. This is my preferred method, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But what I normally do is on one player side, I do this kind of motion, and you have to get used to the stick being in the correct part of your hand, and it just takes a lot of practice. To be honest, when I first learned how to do this, I felt like this is impossible. It's like really hard to do, and one time it just clicked, and eventually I could do it. So yeah, it's pretty simple on one player side, not very hard. However, doing a wave dash on one player side is actually quite difficult. What you would do is what I do at least, is put the stick right here in between these fingers and do a motion like this. And my one player wave dash is not very good. And also my two player backdash is also not very good. But it takes practice, and I think that's one of the beautiful things about Tekken is that no matter how good you get, even the best players in the world can never really master movement because it's just so complex, and there's always room for improvement no matter how good you get at it. So I think that's one of the appeals to this game that most people don't recognize, especially like people that are new to the game or that are just at the entry level. They don't understand that the depth and movement in this game is just beyond anything in most other fighting games. In Street Fighter, you play footsies by just moving the stick back and forward and, being ready to counter poke with buttons and stuff. But in this game, that act of just moving back and forward is actually like tons of, work on, your left hand, and it's really interesting, and that's what I think is really the coolest part about this game. So anyway, Korean backdash on two-player side would be done similarly to the way I do wave dash. On first player side, you put the stick right here, and you do back, back, down, back, down, back, like that. The key is that you hit neutral after the down, back. And there are a lot of good backdash tutorials out there. There's especially one by this guy Black Priest. He does a great job of explaining it, and I'll do my best to link that video in the description of this video, because I really don't want to go over all the little details of exactly how to execute the Korean backdash. I'm more concerned with what it's for and why you should use it. So if you have any more questions about how to do it, you can refer to that guy's video. He did a great job, probably a better job than I could do on explaining exactly how it's done. But as far as how you hold the stick, on two-player side, I do it like this. I hold the stick between my fingers. On one-player side, I use my thumb and these two fingers. And yeah, that's pretty much how I do it. So let me just set up this camera so you guys can see the screen, and I'll get more into detail on why you should be doing this. So I have Prologue set up right now, and I wanted to show the importance of Korean backdash. So as I mentioned earlier, if you're doing it correctly and you're holding back between each backdash, what's happening is you're moving backwards and you are blocking at the same time. The only time you're vulnerable is when you are doing the cancel. So the better you get at this, the smaller the cancel will get. So let's say you're a beginner and sometimes it almost looks like something like this. If you're a brand new player and you're trying to figure out how to move backwards, a lot of the time you just sidestep down. So this is what it looks like. And when you get a little bit better at canceling the backdash with crouch, eventually it'll look more like that. And the better and better you get, that crouch will become smaller and smaller. And eventually it will just be like a crisp backdash. And that's really what you want to go for. Now, what makes Korean backdash so good is that in Tekken, generally speaking, it's good to have the philosophy that the best thing to do at all times is usually nothing. Especially if you're at a range farther than about here, or approximately at this range. If you're up close, there's a lot of stuff you can do to kind of induce mistakes from your opponent. But from about this range and more, there really isn't much you should be doing. Especially if your opponent is the kind of person who will make a mistake if you let them. So patience is really the most important thing when it comes to movement. Because if you're moving, what's the point of moving unless you're going to dodge something? So the key is to make the opponent give you something to dodge, right? So at this range, the thing that I like the most about Korean backdash is it gives you something to do when you have nothing to do, and it's relatively safe. So you're at this range and you're moving around and stuff, you know, you're sidestepping, and you're like, okay, this clown is not sticking anything out. I'm just going to backdash. I'm going to make him stick something out by moving backwards and representing that not only do I have good movement, but he's going to have to come to me. And I understand that this is a very defensive and turtley mentality, and I personally am not a turtley player, but it's very difficult to argue against this being a smart mentality at least 50% of the time. So it's important to think about this. Since this is a movement tutorial, you have to think about defense, because that's pretty much what movement's all about. So as far as backdashing goes, another really important thing that you should remember when you're doing Korean backdash is that it's almost useless unless you can capitalize on a whiff. So I'm not a Mishima player, so excuse me if I, fuck up an input for an electric, but the key here is that if you see something whiff and you're backdashing, you want to do that electric, and you want to punish correctly. And if you're not using a Mishima player, it doesn't matter. Like, for example, I don't use Alyssa either, but let's say you're backdashing. Let's see, I forgot what her launching kick is. There it is. So let's say you're backdashing. By the way, her backdash was toned down in Tag 2, and it's like it's pathetic. She barely moves backwards. Anyway, so if you see that whiff, you want to be ready to punish with whatever your character has to capitalize on this movement that you've learned. So it goes from being something that's just like, whatever, I can Korean backdash, I'm showing off. It goes from that to actually being a really good functioning tool. And I think that's really important to remember. A lot of people will try kind of to learn how to do this tactic, and they'll learn how to do it in training mode, but they won't know how to apply it. And I think the two keys to applying Korean backdash to your game is doing it safely, which is holding back. That's really important. And secondarily, it's also extremely important to incorporate it with all of your other movements. So you're not just Korean backdashing, but you're also sidewalking at the right times. And you have to remember that you can cancel everything into everything in this move when it comes to movement. You can even cancel crouch dashes or anything like that. So it's really important. And being able to capitalize. I mean, that is the most crucial part. If the opponent makes a mistake, you have to be ready to just capitalize on their mistake and punish them accordingly. The other thing I wanted to mention in this tutorial is wave dash. And wave dash is kind of an interesting thing in Tekken. There are two types of crouch dash in this game. Crouch dash, there's a generic crouch dash which is done by quarter circle forward, and there are no characters in the prologue, which is on right now, that have a generic crouch dash, but characters that do have it are like Paul, Dragonoff, I think Raven. There's several characters that have, Fang also has one. They have a generic crouch dash which is done with quarter circle forward. Now this crouch dash is good for closing space, but it's limited because you cannot cancel it with back to block. Now that's what makes a Mishima crouch dash so good. So this is a Mishima crouch dash, and the way it's done is forward, neutral, down, forward. And that gives you that crouch dash. Now a lot of Street Fighter players come to Tekken and they think, oh, this is a Dragon Punch motion. It is absolutely not a Dragon Punch motion. And the reason for that is there is no neutral in a Dragon Punch motion. So you can go forward, down, down, forward, and then hit a punch button, and you will get a Dragon Punch with Ryu. But you have to hit neutral after forward with Mishimas to get that crouch dash. And that is what makes wave dashing so difficult. So, again, I don't really want to get into too much detail on exactly how wave dashing is done. There are a lot of tutorials out there on the exact execution, but what you do is forward, neutral, down, down, forward, giving you a crouch dash, and then you cancel that crouch dash with another forward. So what that does is the third forward is the first forward in the new crouch dash. And I know that sounds complicated, but it really isn't. All you have to do is you have to cancel your crouch dash with a forward and then continue into a new crouch dash and do that over and over again. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Mishima wave dashes can be canceled with back, just like I did right there. And what that does is it makes you be able to pressure your opponent but then block on a dime. And this is a skill. Actually, I watched this guy in Japan. I think his name was Dondi or something like that. He was a Kazuya player, and I've never seen someone, maybe him and Mishima Star were the two best at like pressuring and then blocking at just like the right time. Pressuring with wave dash and then blocking. And I thought that was really impressive, and that is a skill. Now, the reason wave dash is so intimidating is because the theory is that wave dash represents an electric. So with Armor King, it represents a dark uppercut. So what that means is your opponent is afraid of an electric wing god fist or a dark uppercut, which is a safe, fast launcher. And what they're afraid of is you're going to hit them with that launcher. So what that causes is for them to hesitate when they're defending. And what you do then is mix up with mids or mix up with lows and stuff like that. Now, I mentioned earlier that my second player wave dash is much stronger, and that is most certainly true. And the reason for this is because on second player, you can wave dash with your fingers. And it's much easier to wave dash with your fingers than it is to wave dash with your entire hand, if you guys understand what I'm saying. As I mentioned earlier, you have to wave dash with your entire arm. And for example, backdashing on two-player side is also very difficult because you have to use your whole arm, and it requires a certain level of dexterity that is not easily obtained. It takes more practice. And this is also the case with wave dashing on one player side and then, you know, backdashing on one player side. It's really important to remember this stuff. So I think if you guys have any more questions about this kind of stuff, I think it's, to summarize what I went over here, the key is to utilize Korean backdash in the correct way is to use it safely by holding back, but also capitalizing on it. If someone whiffs, make sure you capitalize on it, because what good is Korean backdash if you're just fucking around? You know, if you're just trying to show your opponent you could do it. That's only a small fraction of it. Not only are you representing to your opponent that you have good movement, but you also have to capitalize with this movement and make it useful. So if they make a mistake, if they whiff, you have to be able to punish them. And I think that's extremely important, and I think that's what people forget the most about Korean backdash. I mean, that's what it's for. It moves backwards, and it induces mistakes. It causes frustration. I mean, look at, you know, for example, String Bean. He's an Elisa player. If you watch him play, you'll see that guy induces mistakes. Or Al from Japan, again, You know, his movement induces mistakes. Ni, the Brian player from Korea, he also plays this way. Very defensive. Tongball Love, he also does this too. A very defensive style with Korean backdash. And I think that's the best way to use it. Now, on the reverse side, when you're trying to be aggressive, there are a lot of players out there, Korean players, Japanese players, for example, like Mishima Star or Dondi or Jizmoon Face, my favorite Mishima player from Korea. These guys are really aggressive with wave dash, and that's because they're representing that electric. So it's kind of the two flip sides of the coin. One side is very defensive, and you use that to induce mistakes. The other side is very aggressive and offensive, and what you do there is you represent electric with a wave dash, and what that does is induces defensive mistakes from your opponent. And all of these things, I have to stress, require just an unbelievable amount of practice. It's extremely difficult to master these things, and in fact, I think it's impossible. So all I can really recommend is just practice, 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 do your homework, and learn to appreciate kind of the hidden beauty in the movement of Tekken, because really that's what makes this game great. A lot of the people who watch this game and criticize it for it being boring, they can't see the beauty in its movement. You know, people don't even have to be pushing buttons in this game, and if you understand and appreciate how cool and deep the movement is in this game, you can really have fun watching a match, watching top players play, even if they're both fucking turtling and they're not doing anything. They're just turtling and not pushing buttons. That still can be entertaining, and I think Tekken is the only game that can provide that, just because of the intricacies of the movement in this game. So hopefully I covered everything involving wave dash and backdash. If anyone has any further questions, you know, feel free to leave comments, and do me a solid, subscribe to this YouTube channel. I do think that in the near future, I'm going to do a tutorial video explaining most of the tag functions in this game, because even though this is a demo, it does feature all of the tag features, and I know a lot of people want to pick up Tag 2, so that's one thing I want to do. And I also will probably do a review of the whole Tekken Hybrid package. It comes with Tekken Tag Tournament 1 HD, Tekken Tag Tournament 2 Prologue, and the animated movie, which I couldn't care less about. So yeah, do me a solid, subscribe, and I guess I'll catch you guys next time. Take it easy.